Hey guys, welcome back to a fun video today. It's a spring mega video, lots of spring DIY inspiration for you. Some of these DIYs are from a few years ago. I bet you haven't seen them all. If you have, I'm impressed. Let me know down below. Keep in mind that this is a collections video, so you might hear me say for our first DIY or for our last DIY on multiple occasions. But there's lots of fun budget-friendly DIYs using Dollar Tree, Dollar General clearance, Hobby Lobby clearance, thrift store finds, things I had around the house, lots of budget-friendly DIY ideas. Let's get started.
For this first one, we are going to take this sign from Hobby Lobby. I picked it up on clearance. I think it was under $2, but you could use just like a board you have on hand or a sign from the Dollar Tree, but this worked out perfect for me. I'm going to take off the sawtooth hanger and pull out any staples, and we're just going to clean this up a little bit. We're going to sand down the surface. We're going to sand down the holes from the staples, sand down where I took off the tag, because this side is actually going to be the front for this project. And once everything is sanded, we're going to fill in all the holes and gaps with lightweight spackling from Dollar Tree. Once that dries, you're going to sand it down again and smooth it out. All these steps may or may not be necessary depending on what you use for your base. And then we're going to give the front a coat of Waverly chalk paint in the color Elephant. And then we're going to go in with white. The dark color first just kind of helps cover up all this pattern and words. Even though this is going to be the back of the sign, I still want to make sure that it looks completed and finished. So now, once I've got all of my white paint on with all of the coverage I want, I think I did a couple of coats, I'm going in with some apple barrel acrylic paint in the color Burnt Umber, and you dry brush by just putting a little bit of paint on, wiping a lot of it off, and then just dry brushing to give like a distressed look. And now we're going to move on to our mason jar sign. This is from the Dollar Tree. It just comes off pretty easily here, although it does kind of go flying on me here. I took the screws out and then used a scraper tool, and there it went. But yeah, there was just a little bit of hot glue underneath there, which I'm scraping off, that was holding it on. You don't necessarily have to take this off, but I just think it's easier to work with when I'm not worrying about getting anything on that little piece there. So once again, we're going in with Waverly chalk paint in Elephant. Then we're going to go in with the color Celery from Waverly as well. But as I was doing this, I felt like the words were still coming through. So there you can see I like sanded it down a little bit, hoping that would help. So now I'm going in with Celery, and it just was still showing up. I could have peeled off the paper. I probably should have just sanded it better before I got started, but hindsight's always 20/20. So once I got going in this, you can see, I could just still kind of see the writing. So I'm going in with that lightweight spackling, and I'm going to do a thin coat, just kind of pushing it in there, and it actually filled in, it was actually grooves, it wasn't raised. So I did that and then let that dry, sanded it off, and then gave it another coat of the color Celery, and it gave a completely finished look. So there's another tip and trick if you're having trouble with it. So now I'm going to just take off the little hanger on the back. I could have taken that off in the beginning, but I was actually using that to kind of hold my sign while I painted it, but I don't need it for this project. So we're going to take that off, and I'm saving that as well because you never know in the future. And now I'm taking some white stickers. These were from Hobby Lobby that I picked up on clearance a while ago, but you could use a rub-on transfer. You could do words, you could do a design, you could paint a different pattern on, but I'm just going to put on the word joy, and then I'm going in with that burnt umber again, and we're going to dry brush over the whole thing. Right now I'm going to emphasizing the edges, and then we're going to do the whole thing over the words, try to blend it all in a little bit more so that it's not looking like stickers. So that's kind of the point of this here. And now we're going to attach the metal top of what's supposed to be the top of the mason jar back on with these little screws, and then I'm going to go in with more of that burnt umber on top of the metal and just once again make that look kind of old and blend in with the rest of the sign. And then once it's completely dry, I do put some Mod Podge over the whole thing. I like using Mod Podge on my projects because I feel like it seals everything in. You don't have to worry about paint scraping off, especially on things like metal, but I pretty much do it on all of my projects. So once everything is dry, the sign, the mason jar, all of that, I'm taking these floral picks that I picked up from Dollar Tree, and we're just going to clip off a couple of sprigs, and you can usually move the flowers or leaves up and down on the stem and like reposition them to where you want them. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. And we're just making a little floral arrangement, holding it up to see, make sure it's how I like how it looks. Make sure I like how it looks. Got tongue tied there. And now we're just going to use some hot glue, and I just keep putting the sign back over to make sure all of the florals are where I want them, putting some hot glue and then holding them in place kind of flat up against the sign until everything's how I want it, and then putting some hot glue on the bottom and the top. Because of the stems, they don't really, the whole mason jar does not lay flat, but I'm just putting a good amount on the top and bottom, placing that, trying to make sure it's somewhat centered. And that is all I did. Oh no, that's not true. I added a little bit more hot glue. You can't really see what I'm doing here, but I couldn't get a good angle. Just down in the top, just to make sure everything was secured nice and good. And I love how this sign came out. I think it's really cute. For this next one, we're going to take this 4x4 frame from the Dollar Tree. I love this one. It is really cute. It's just plastic, but it looks like it's got this wood grain. But I'm going to start by just painting this frame with some white Waverly chalk paint. I'm kind of doing a heavy dry brush, so I'm not doing a thick coverage. I liked that wood grain and even the different colors coming through, but I definitely wanted it more on the white side. So that's what I'm doing. But of course, remember with all of these, you can do these in any colors that you want. I am going over it with some Mod Podge to seal in that paint so that it doesn't scrape off on me. But use any frame. You can do this with any size frame as well, or shaped item, but this is what I was using. I did pick out this frame for this DIY in mind to make sure it was the right size for what I wanted to do with it, but there's always variety. Now for my paper, I'm using these file folders from the Dollar Tree. I had picked them up because I thought the pattern on them was super cute, but you could just paint the back of something. You could use some scrapbook paper, whatever you want. And then we're using these little mirrored house stickers from the Dollar Tree. They also have them in like cactuses and butterflies, all sorts of really cute things. And I'm just centering it on the paper, and I think I do end up, yeah, I do end up using the glass because it's not super thick. And make sure you peel the little, there's a little plastic piece over the mirror tile. You want to take that off so that you get that glossy look. And it's a really cute, it's kind of hard to get a good shot of this because it is mirrored. So there's all of the reflection going on, but just a really cute sign. I love the idea of having some signs that don't all have words on them. So I loved this. First up, I'm going to be using this sign that I picked up from Hobby Lobby on clearance for only a couple of bucks. I love finding these types of things on clearance at Hobby Lobby, but you can also find something somewhat similar at the Dollar Tree. I am starting by taking off the little chunk here in the back because we're actually going to be using the back as the front. I did already take off stickers and sanded that down. So now I'm just trying to remove this little chunk of piece, I don't know how what to call it, that has a little sawtooth hanger attached to it. And I didn't want to do any damage to the piece. So I was just using my hairdryer, or you can use a heat gun to loosen up any glue that's in there to make it come off a little bit easier. And I just used a little scraper tool and worked my way through and popped that off. You could also just pull it off, and I mean, it probably won't damage too much, but these things are definitely put together better than the ones from the Dollar Tree. So there was a little bit that was remaining. I sanded it down best I could, and then I'm going to use that for the bottom. And I'm using this paintbrush and some white Waverly chalk paint. This is a paintbrush from the Dollar Tree. Honestly, this one is not the greatest. The bristles like constantly come out of it, but it's giving me the chippy look, so I'm going with it. So I wanted some of the brown, which is really just the MDF, to pop through because I liked that wood type look. And then I am going to paint the sides and the back of the sign just in a more solid white, just so that they look finished. But you could do this however you wanted to do it. The very back, ultimately, if you hang it on the wall, obviously won't be seen, but if it's on a shelf, you're going to want to finish that by either painting it or covering it with some paper of some kind. And so, like I said, the sides and the back I did with thicker coats, and then the inside I just did more of a chippy, rough look. But do it to your personal preference. If you are new here, please consider subscribing before you leave. I love sharing, like I said, budget-friendly DIYs with you, and I would love to have you be a part of my YouTube community. It does not cost you anything to subscribe, but if you subscribe and hit the notification bell that'll pop up next to it, that'll make sure that you get notified whenever I post a new video. Once the paint was fully dry, I went over it with a sanding block and just kind of smoothed it out, roughed out some of the edges a little bit, and then I apparently did not film the taking this out of the package, but this is a little ceramic wall pocket from the Dollar Tree. They carried it in white and black, and so we are just going to attach this to the inside. It was in like the floral area, vase area in my Dollar Tree, but it might also be near the frames. And I'm just using some super glue gel to attach that. It doesn't actually lay flat on the bottom, so I attached it to the back, but I put it all the way towards the bottom. So I hope that makes sense. And then I'm just using some little floral picks and bent the stems so that they would fit inside of this pocket, and made myself a little bit of an arrangement. Now I do plan to use some command hooks, some Velcro command strips to attach this to my wall, but for now I'm just showing it to you on a table. But I love how this came out. I think it's a really cute planner, and I'm wishing I had picked up more of those little wall pockets to do like a collection of these, but nonetheless, I love it. Moving on, I have this picture frame that I picked up from Hobby Lobby. It was originally $17.99. I picked it up for $1.99 on clearance. It's a large frame. The glass was broken in it, but I don't need the glass for this. So very carefully, I'm going to take off the back, and which was kind of already jammed up a little bit because of the broken glass, and very carefully going to remove the glass and dispose of it. Now they do have frames at the Dollar Tree, and you can also get really good prices at thrift stores, but this was a great find at Hobby Lobby on clearance, and it's a very large frame, so I love that. So I didn't want the like smooth glossy finish of the black frame, so I'm just dry brushing with a little bit of a white chalk paint just to kind of give it a more of a farmhouse look and get rid of some of the glossy finish. Now I did also cover this with some matte finish Mod Podge, just because the paint did seem like it would chip easily off of the frame, so I did not film that, but I did do that. Now I'm going to take some fabric that I picked up at the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to use the back of the frame and Mod Podge that on. Now if you wanted it to be a little bit of a brighter background, you might want to paint this first, because it does impact like the view through the fabric, but I didn't mind how it came out at all. I'm just doing this in sections with the Mod Podge because I wanted to make sure it was straight, because there is a pattern to this fabric, and I wanted to make sure that, you know, it didn't look crooked. So I bought this fabric a little bit ago, not super long ago, but a little bit ago at the Dollar Tree because I loved it, but I've been waiting for the perfect project for this, and I was excited when I put this together because I feel like it was just perfect, the perfect job for this fabric. Now I am using, I think it's called like a hard coat Mod Podge, because I have that in my collection of Mod Podge from Plaid that they had sent me, and either way I feel like Mod Podge does make fabric harder like when it dries, but I don't know, maybe this one is a little bit harder as well. And then I just put this on top of some paint container so that it was elevated so the fabric could drape down, and I'm putting a very thick coat of this hard coat Mod Podge across the top, just really wanting it to kind of saturate, making sure I'm getting the edges that is fully on. And now I'm going to let that dry, and I've got this little piece from the Dollar Tree. I've had it for at least a year, but they have them again this year. They also have them in the form of like a yard pick, and so I am just using some my hands to bend things back and forth, and these wire cutters to take it apart. I just want the windmill piece, so I had to take off this little circle center. We're going to attach that later, and it was like there was a little bit of I don't know, like little pieces of metal that were preventing me from sliding this off, so I was just kind of ripping them off. It wasn't not hard to do at all, and I got my windmill off, and so I'm not painting mine at all because I really liked the finish of it, but they come in different finishes, one with like a bluish white, blue and white like on it. So if you don't like the color of the windmill, certainly feel free to paint it. And I'm trying to cut it off once this is all dry, but the scissors, I don't know, probably my scissors were just not that great, not that sharp. So I'm just using a cutting tool and a cutting mat, and I'm just going to cut off the excess fabric. This is very easy to do. It comes off super easy, especially once all the Mod Podge is finished. And if you have better scissors, you can probably do it with just your scissors. So I put the back in the picture frame, and we're just attaching our windmill on. There's only, I showed you that little tiny piece to attach it to, but it does work. And so I just used some super glue gel, attached that on, and then I reattached a little circle finish piece on top. And I did let that dry thoroughly. And even though there wasn't a large space that was in contact with the glue, it's holding up just fine. Kind of looks like there's a little bit of reflection in this shot. I'm not totally sure why, but I love how this came out. I'm really excited to use this. I wanted something to put on there that didn't have words since the fabric itself had words, and I thought the windmill was a perfect little farmhouse touch, and I love how that came out. All right, so for my first DIY, I've got these 3 little metal buckets. I picked these up at a thrift store for like, it was either $1 or 50 cents. I don't remember, but for the 3 of them, great price, but you can get them at like craft stores and Dollar Tree and stuff like that. And we're going to dry brush this with some Waverly chalk paint in the color white to start out with. I am doing a couple coats and letting it thoroughly dry in between. So I wanted more coverage, but I still wanted it to look sparse. So I just did a little bit at a time. And now I'm going in and doing the same thing with some black paint. This is a black and brown paint combo that I use later in the video that I had out. And I did that also with just a dry brush, not doing a full coverage here. And then once that was dry, I went back in with a little bit more white paint because I definitely wanted it to be brighter and lighter, but I wanted the old rustic look, which honestly, these tins were kind of old and rustic when I bought them from the thrift store, but nonetheless. And sorry the lighting keeps changing in the video. I was doing it different times of day and the sun coming in and out and all that stuff. So now I'm just taking some of the green floral foam from the Dollar Tree. This is the stuff that's like more flexible, and I think you can use with water if you're using actual like real flowers. And I just cut that into pieces and I'm putting it down in the tin. It's fit really perfect where it was a nice and snug, but you can kind of smush in the corners to get it down in there. And then I'm taking these succulents that I picked up from the Dollar Tree as well as these rocks. And the styrofoam helped keep it from me needing to use like tons of rocks, which was a great filler. And I just did that for all 3 and then pushed the succulents all the way down once I had the rocks in. And I think this is really cute. Okay, so for this next one, this is really easy. I have this little yard stake sign from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to use my hairdryer, or you can use a heat gun, just to loosen it up to get the stake out of there. You could also just cut it off, but I decided to go this route. So now I'm going to take the wired jute cord from Dollar Tree and cut off a piece. Now I realized that when you cut it off, the jute cord kind of comes off the wire, so I was using some hot glue to kind of keep that from unraveling. Now a pipe cleaner would have been perfect for this. I wanted to use something that was soft because I'm going to be putting this on my door and I didn't want it scratching the glass. But a pipe cleaner would have worked really great as well. And I'm just going to use some super glue gel to attach this. I didn't use hot glue because this is going to be in the sun. So here is the wheel form that I used previously for fall time. Has harvest on there, obviously. So I'm just going to take that off. That's just on there with some wire. This was not previously used on my door as a wreath. So I just took that off, and I am going to take some garland from the Dollar Tree. I bought 2 of them, which I'm glad I did, just because they're kind of sparse looking. And I'm just going to wrap this around. So once I have the garland wrapped around, and like I said, I didn't use any glue or anything. I actually moved outside to do this part. As you can probably tell, I was just on my driveway. Just wrapping this around. It is wired garland, so that attached really easily. The ends were easy to attach as well, just by twisting them around. And then we're going to add our little truck, and this goes well with what's on my porch. Unfortunately, I didn't have all the things I needed to hang this up on my door, so I'm just showing it to you laying on my driveway. But I love how it came out. So for this first project, I have this little container, canister, milk can type of thing from Dollar General. It was originally $5, and I'm pretty sure I paid less than $1 for it. I love Dollar General's clearance. they tend to have really, really good clearance. And then I have some scraps of some fabric that I had picked up from the Dollar Tree. And I am not perfect at this. I don't know that I'm doing this the best way, but I am measuring how much fabric I need to cut. And I'm using just a ruler and a cutting mat and a cutting tool, all from the Dollar Tree, but use whatever you have on hand. You can also just cut it with scissors, mark it with a pen or whatever, and then cut it with scissors. And we're just going to simply recover this. As you can see, all I'm doing is hot gluing this around. The first time the hot glue's kind of set on the tin before I could get the fabric on it, so I ended up just putting it on the fabric. The bow ended up popping off, so I just hot glued it back on and filled it with some greenery. For this next DIY, we're going to make one of those leaner signs for my front porch. I picked up these letters from Hobby Lobby. I think they're just like the chipboard type of material. It depends on like what your sign is going to be exposed to and the size letters. I basically found a wood board, which I'll show you in a second, from Hobby Lobby, and I picked out letters that fit the board that I found. But anyways, I just picked out HME. We'll be doing something else for an O. This is an old video. I'm actually redoing the voiceover because it was really, the video is really long and music was loud and the talking. Anyways, so I'm redoing this real time. But all I did was painted this with some acrylic paint. I wasn't using a ton of chalk paint at this point in my DIY journey. But it worked great. It still held up. I still use this sign. So I'm just going to paint the sides and the front, and it did take a couple of coats. But yeah, it's going to depend on if you're using like wood ones or what you're using. So here is the wood board that I picked up from Hobby Lobby. I think at the time it was $9.99 and I got it like 50% off. I think they're a couple dollars more now, but still a really good deal. And I was painting this. I tried to do like a whitewash kind of. I'm using some gray paint. This was just like our house paint that I had on hand that I watered down. And I ended up having to do a couple coats of it. The whitewash ended up, I don't know. I didn't end up needing to do that. But I wanted the wood grain to come through. But paint this, stain this, whatever you want to do. Yeah, I do end up doing the other side in the next DIY I'm going to show you. I ended up making this a double-sided sign like a year or so later, but at this time I just did the front and the sides. So when I saw how the color looked on the board, it was so light that I thought the letters were going to blend in too much, just being white. So I went around with, I don't know if that was like a gray or a brown. I just used a paper towel and just brushed that around the edges to kind of outline them. And then I did a couple little marks on the front of the letters themselves to just kind of make it look a little bit more distressed. But this helped make the letters pop out a little bit more against the gray background of the sign. So for my O, I really wanted this to be an interchangeable sign. This wreath I picked up at the Target dollar spot, it looks like. Again, this was many years ago. But I wanted this to be interchangeable. So this was just me figuring out how to do it. I didn't have any specific instructions. So I ended up using those little, I think they're called cup hooks or C hooks, but we'll get to that in a second. To put on the letters, I'm using some E6000 and the sprayer on this was horrible. So I ended up just brushing it on with a paintbrush and attaching it. But I would recommend using like a wood glue, but the E6000 worked great. But that probably nowadays I would have just used like a wood glue. But I learned, this was a while ago, and I was learning as I went. So once my letters were secure, I moved on to attaching my wreath. So yeah, I think those are called cup hooks, C hooks. And my thought, well, you'll see. I'm going to just put these at the top and the bottom of the wreath. And then what I ended up doing was attaching what's it called? A safety pin, little safety pins on the top of my wreath and the bottom of my wreath to use the safety pins to slide over the hooks. And I could twist the hooks down a little bit, like they're in there all the way, but there's able to still be moved. And that allowed the safety pin to go on and off a little bit easier. I hope that I'm making sense. But I did that so that I could hang different things on here. You can see there's multiple holes because I didn't really know what I was doing. But you know what? I did because I came up with a completed project in the end. So you can see I've got some little safety pins there, and what I was able to do was, this was really hard for me to like film and show you what I was doing, but I was able to slide them over the hooks here. Hopefully you can kind of see this. And this held great. My porch gets lots of wind, and I've never like lost the wreath on it. So I just slid that over, and then on the bottom one, I just turned the hook in order to get it into the safety pin, and then I twisted the hook down so that it wouldn't slide back off. So again, I hope I'm making sense. It's really hard for you to kind of see this. So here you go. See, I turned it sideways and slid my safety pin on it. And then, let's see, come on, you can get it. There we go. And then I turned it down so that it would stay on. And this ended up working out well. Let me know if you would have done it differently. I mean, a command strip of some kind would have been great, but that really wouldn't have worked on the wreath itself. So this worked. But I love how this one came out. And up next in the next DIY, I'm going to show you how I redid the other side of this.
All right, so for this project, we are headed out to my garage, and I have this home sign. There's some little hooks here you can see where like a wreath or something goes for the O. I made this quite a while ago. We're going to do a reverse sign. This board came from Hobby Lobby at the time. I think it was $9.99, and I'm sure I got it 40 or 50% off. I think they're $12.99 now, but I'm just going to clean up this back side of the board. I'm going to paint it the same color as the other one, which is actually just agreeable gray. It's our house paint. Just because I don't know, I guess that's what I had on hand when I did it the first time. So I'm gonna give that a coat of the agreeable gray or two, and then we're going to make this reversible sign.
All right, moving inside, I have these letters that I picked up at Hobby Lobby. They were $2.49 or $3.49 a piece. I don't remember exactly. They're not something that goes on sale, but overall I thought it was still a good price for a large outdoor sign. And I wanted to do hello. I picked out whatever letters. They have so many different options, but I picked out ones that would just fit on the board that I already had. So that's kind of how I made my decision. I found the same board at Hobby Lobby and walked around with it, laying out the letters until I found ones that were going to fit. And then I picked out some really bright, fun colors from my paint stash. I don't normally do a lot of bright colors, but I thought it'd be fun for spring, and we're going to use these colors in both of our DIYs for my porch today. And I'm just going to give these a couple of coats, and I'm making sure that I'm painting all of the edges as well, and just giving it a nice saturated color because, like I said, I want something nice and bright. So I thought it'd be fun to add a little bit of detail here. So I'm just using a small paintbrush and doing little dashes of white, kind of like a stitching look. I am not doing it as good as I've seen other people do it, but that's okay. It doesn't really bother me. And I'm just doing that along the edges of each of the letters just for a little added detail. Here they are all finished. I decided to give this a nice coat of Mod Podge, and I'm using the one that is dishwasher safe. Obviously, this sign will not be in the dishwasher, but I thought that it would help protect it pretty good against the weather elements, although the corner where I placed this sign does not usually get affected by that too much, but I figured why not. Now let's head back outside. Okay, so I painted the board and gave it about 2 coats, pulled it out into the sun to dry it a little bit quicker. And we're gonna go ahead and attach the letters. I'm sure you realize this, but you can use any paint that you want. I'm just using the house paint because that's what I used the first time around. I did give it a rough sand, but this is an outdoor piece. I'm not worried about it being like, you know, super perfect. So we're gonna go ahead and attach our letters. I don't have the best setup in my garage to film this. I've just got stuff everywhere. But I'm going to use this Gorilla wood glue to attach these, and I'll probably place something on top of each letter just to kind of hold it down while the glue sets. But I have everything laid out, spaced out the way I want it, and we're gonna go ahead and attach them using this wood glue. I will show you how that sign came out at the end. We're going to move on to a doormat. Now, I have done these multiple times in multiple ways. I am once again using a Dollar Tree mat, although I have used some of the, I don't know what they're called, but like the really stiff bristled ones. I picked them up before at IKEA, and I'm sure you can get them other places. But I love doing these from the Dollar Tree because They're super cheap, and my Christmas one ended up blowing away, and I wasn't heartbroken about it. I mean, plus it was like February, so I really didn't have a need for it anymore. But yeah, so we're going to take one of the Dollar Tree mats and we're going to stencil. I found a really cute phrase. I don't know, I was just looking on Pinterest and just looking at some different phrases. And so I found these stencils. These are from Walmart. I've used them before. They are adhesive. They're reusable, but the adhesive, of course, doesn't stick super great because of the material we're putting this on. So I just made sure to not oversaturate my brush, but I just kind of went over it multiple times so that I had a brighter white. And we're going to do the words in white. And then I also have this little flower stencil. This is from one of those plastic wheel of stencils, if you know what I'm talking about, from Dollar Tree. I've just cut them apart to make it easier to store them and to use them. And I'm just going to do them all over this mat with different colors, using the same colors I used for the front sign. And after I started with the flowers, I remembered that I had more letters to put on. So I'm using these stencils. These are also from Walmart. They are like paper, kind of like a coated paper. So they are reusable, but they are not like, you know, they don't last forever, but they're smaller and they worked perfect to finish this out. I do not seal my mats at all, and I've had no problems with them. My porch does get a lot of sun, and when the rain comes, it often comes in sideways and sometimes does hit my mat. And they seem to hold up just fine. I'm just using regular acrylic paint. So I've not had any problems with it, so I can only speak to my experience. All right, let's head back outside for our third project, and then I'll show you everything completed at the end.
All right, we are back out in the garage for another piece. I was kind of debating on painting this, and I think I'm going to try to do something fun with this. I picked this up at a rummage sale probably 10 years ago for like $2 or $3. Our last house, this was inside the house, painted black. I think the original color, yeah, it's probably like, I don't know if you can see it, like the wood there. And then I painted it white, and you can see that's wearing. So I think I'm gonna have fun with some of the colors that I used on the other DIYs. Now that is acrylic paint, which is not like the best thing for this, but this stuff gets weathered and beat up, so it doesn't last forever anyway. So I don't really care. I want it to like use the same colors. So I'm just gonna use the acrylic paint and let's see what we come up with. I think I'm going to attempt to use all of these colors. I don't know if that's like too much. It's so not my typical style, but I'm thinking of doing each one of the legs a different color and then the top and the shelf another color. So I'm going to do the main pieces with blue because that's what I have the most of, and we're gonna go in with these. These paints are really old. They probably actually need to be tossed, but we're gonna give it a shot. I'm just using sponge brushes again. I don't know if I'm using the best stuff for these projects, but we're gonna just have fun with it and hope that I have enough paint to finish these projects.
All right, so I'm not gonna show you all of the painting, but you can see I just went over it and over it until I had a nice saturated color. I'm not doing anything special, just using a foam paintbrush. And I hope you enjoy this type of video. It's a little bit more casual than my DIY videos, but I just switched things up this time around, and I hope you liked it.
All right, so now that it's all painted, I'm gonna go ahead and seal it with the Mod Podge. This is the dishwasher safe one. Not that this is gonna be in the dishwasher, but I have it on hand, and I feel like it'll probably do a better job protecting against some elements. Ideally, you'd use probably like a polyacrylic that's for outdoor, but as I said before, I'm not super worried about it. Plus, this is just what I have on hand. So that's what I'm gonna use. And I'm just gonna give that a coat, maybe two, we'll see. All right, I'm gonna talk real loud because lawnmowers are happening. But here is the table all finished. I need to find some other things to put on top of it. These are just a couple things I had on hand, and I see one of my hairs hanging off the plant because I shed like crazy. I'm not usually this casual. This is more of like a vlog style that I put on my other channel, but that's what you're getting in today's DIY video. If you look closely, it's not perfect, but I love it. It's fun, it's brightly colored, and as a fun little pop-out color, here is the doormat, which has been out for a couple days now, so it's not as clean as it was to begin with, but love that. And here is how the hello sign came out, and I'm very pleased. I think it's fun. I'll probably add a couple more things out to the porch, but that's probably it for my DIYs.
Alright guys, so for this first DIY, I picked up 3 books from the Dollar Tree, looking for ones that were around the same size, and some white Waverly chalk paint, and we're going to start by painting the books. So I picked up 2 books that were the exact same, and then the third one was close, but I'm not going to show you that till after it's painted, because I did not realize till after I got home that the cover, not like awful, but it was a little bit more risque than I would be comfortable having. And I just was not paying attention to what the books were that I was buying at all. I was just paying attention to the size. So anyways, picked up 3 books around the same size. I painted the top and spines of my books a few coats until it was well covered. And then I did paint the bottom of the one book just in case someone picked up the decor. I don't know. I wanted it all covered. And then I hot glued them together just to help keep them connected. And then I'm using this stencil from the Dollar Tree and stickers from the Dollar Tree. And you can put whatever writing, words, phrases, names, dates, whatever you want on the books. And then I used some acrylic paint, which I think was from Walmart, but you could use whatever you want, whatever you have. And I decided to put Home Sweet Home. And then, now there was a little bit of texture on the books from the writing that was pretty well covered, but I decided to just kind of distress these books, maybe make them look like some wooden books. Plus I got a tiny bit of paint from the stencil on a different part, and I thought, let me just work with it. Plus that just kind of goes better with my home decor style. So we're going to, I guess you would say, distress that in just a little bit here. That one M sticker had ripped, but I was able to still make it work. So I'm trying to show you what I'm doing. I'm trying to do a really, really good dry brush, and I'm just kind of going along the edges mainly, and then kind of going into the inside. I didn't do too much on the top here because I actually realized that with the distressing would actually bring out some of the texture that was left behind from the writing of the book. But just did it until I got the look that I wanted, and then I decided to wrap it with some twine. You could also add a little decal on here. You could put a little heart, whatever. I decided to kind of just keep it simple. So I just thought this came out super cute, and I placed this on my ottoman in my living room on a little tray that I have there, and I did end up putting a little green piece of floral that I had lying around on top, and I love how this came out. This might be my favorite piece. I don't know. I like them all. For this next DIY, I just picked up this gray frame from the Dollar Tree, and I like the gray. We have a lot of gray in our house, so that worked out well. I didn't have to do a whole lot here, but I am dry brushing on some white Waverly chalk paint just to kind of give it like a white wash. I'm taking just a piece of white computer paper, and I'm just figuring out the size I need to fit in the frame. I thought about I was just going to trace like the corners and use my paper cutter, but then I realized the paper was too big on one side to use the paper cutter. Anyways, I would recommend probably using something thicker, like some maybe cardstock or like a piece of poster board or something, just because the paper ended up getting a little bit wrinkled from painting it, but it not enough to like really make me be bothered by it and feel like I needed to redo it, but I just thought I'd put that out there in case you use some of my same method. So I am just taking this paint from another chalk paint from Waverly. This is in the moss, and I'm just painting like a splotch. It's kind of more like abstract, I guess. So I'm just painting this on, and then we're going to let it dry. Once it is fully dry, I picked up this piece of greenery just from my decorative stash that I have, and I'm tracing this on, and I'm just going to start out by tracing it with a pencil. It took a little bit just because, you know, it's not like it was laying flat, so I had to kind of hold each section down at a time and went over it with a pencil. Make sure your paint's all the way dry so you don't scrape off your paint while you're doing this. I didn't have any of that problem, but I did. Actually, I think I let this paint dry overnight. Half these projects I did one day, and then the second half of them I did the next day, which is why the lighting's different and my outfit's different and all of that. So there it is. I traced it out with pencil, and then I went back in with a Sharpie, just like a fine-tip Sharpie. I was going to try to go in with like a fine-tipped paintbrush, but I felt like I was going to end up messing it up. So I went in this way and just traced it over. I was also able to kind of fix some areas that, you know, weren't traced well. And then once I made sure the permanent marker was dry, which obviously doesn't take long, but making sure that was completely dry, I was able to go back in with an eraser and erase any pencil marks that kind of were still there that I didn't trace over exactly. And then I just drew in the lines for the leaves, and then I decided to kind of go back over it a second time to thicken it up. I wanted it to pop a little bit more. I was able to also clean up some of my lines from the tracing and drawing, and so I went back in with a permanent marker again. I'm sure there's a number of ways you could do this with the Arteza chalk paint pens, which I don't own, but I see a lot of people use, or any other type of like marker. But I just kind of liked this, so I just left it as is and cleaned up the glass and put it all together. Here it is all finished, and I love how this came out. I thought it was super cute. I like kind of the abstract piece of it, and I like doing things that involve like drawing and painting. I don't do that a lot, but I really enjoy doing that, so this one was really fun.
Okay, so for these next DIYs, we are going to grab these canvases from the Dollar Tree. Actually pretty cute, but we're gonna take them apart. And then these are some, I'm gonna try to keep the bell silent, some garden decor from the Dollar Tree as well. They have them also in like the stakes that go on the ground, but I just grabbed these little ones, but any of the little flowers would do. And all right, let's get started. All right, so I'm gonna start by just taking off the little bell piece and the hook on the flower. I'm just using a pair of wire cutters, which is, I wasn't cutting the wire, I was just using it to pry it open, so pliers would probably be better. And then I'm going to try to take the canvas off of the frame. Now, mine goes a little different than I've seen it work for other people. Yeah, so there you have it. That is not what happened to people that I've seen take these canvases apart. Now, I know not all canvases are the same at the Dollar Tree. Some of them have like more of a wood frame to it. This was like the MDF stuff, but I redeemed this. I made it work, but this was kind of a hot mess for just a little bit here. So I wasn't going to show you all of the, from both of these, because I did two of the same thing, but I wanted to show you this one because although I struggled a little bit, this frame did not completely fall apart. So I don't know if it was a bad frame or if my technique was bad. I've actually never cut the canvas off any of these before, I don't think. I think I've DIY'd them differently by just like painting them, but you know, it's $1, so I figured if it didn't work out, I was fine, but it worked out just fine. Just be gentle with them. They're $1. We're gonna try to fill in these holes with hot glue, so that's what I'm gonna do. I don't know if it's gonna work, but I'm gonna fill it from the back and use my little rubber tip to protect, or to keep it from going all the way through on the front. That actually kind of worked to fill in the little holes. You could just leave them and probably nobody would notice that there was a hole in there, but I just wanted to. So I'm going to start by just gluing back my one frame, and I used some hot glue. I wasn't sure if that was going to hold, but it held just fine. So this isn't really part of the DIY. I'm just putting it back together. Now when I put it back together, I accidentally put one of the sides with the staples on the side with the others that didn't have staples. So I did have to pull out a couple staples, but then for the back, which is where all of the staples should be, I pulled out those that I could. I was also just ripping out any little pieces of canvas, and then I just hammered them in, which of course is moving my camera, so whatever. But just hammered them down so they wouldn't be sticking out and, you know, scraping my wall or whatever, and then just cleaning up the pieces of canvas. Now I'm giving them a rough sand. This, like I said, is like that MDF stuff, and I knew I wasn't gonna get it smooth, and I also knew I needed to be gentle because I just ripped one of the frames apart. So I'm just giving it a very rough, light sanding, rough, light, you know what I mean. They're not really the same thing, but they're kind of the same thing when you're talking about sanding, let's be honest. And then I'm just using a sponge brush to paint all of the inside, outside, and front with some white Waverly chalk paint. This did take a couple coats because of the material, but because of the material, it also dried really fast, so it was really quick to put on multiple coats. All right, now we're moving on to the flower, and I'm just lifting up the petals so that I can paint each layer, and I'm going in the with the color silver of the white Waverly chalk paint, and going to paint down in the nooks and crannies and just paint the whole thing. This also took a coat or two, well, I would say 2 or 3 coats, just making sure it dries really well in between. So now we're going to use the long dowel rods from the Dollar Tree, and we're going to use 2 per canvas. So I know I'm doing 2 of them, but I'm not going to show you all the details for everything times 2. But one you're going to just put all the way across, and
I'm not using the best method to cut these. I was trying to just kind of like score it and then cut it off. I found later on that just scoring it by lightly squeezing with my wire cutters worked, and then once it was scored a little bit, squeezing all the way and cutting it. So anyways, one of them is going to go all the way across, and the other one you're going to cut into 2 pieces, and then I'm just sanding, not really well, but just sanding off the really, really rough edges. And I bent down to do it over a garbage can because I've got paint drying, and I didn't want to do it on that surface, but I'm just going to let you see how we're doing that, making sure they're the right sizes, and we're going to sand them down. And then I went in with the Waverly chalk paint in the color Elephant, and I'm painting on with like the side of a sponge brush and then wiping it off. That looked like there was nothing on the ends, but I think that was sunlight. But anyways, I didn't quite do it like a stain because I didn't water it down, but I knew the elephant color was going to be plenty dark, and it helped them dry faster, so wiped it on, wiped it off. Sorry, the daylight changed. I worked on these projects all day, so we're going to go with it best we can with the lighting. So now I went back to the flowers, and I painted the center with the elephant chalk paint, and then I did some accents with that as well, and I just used a really fine tip paintbrush, and I'm just kind of following, there's little indents in the flowers, and I just kind of did really light wispy marks just to kind of give it a little bit more depth and dimension. I'm not a professional, I'm not an artist. Well, I'm a creator. I like to do art, but I wouldn't say I'm an artist. But I'm just saying that because, you know, you can do it. Just go for it. And if you do too much, then just go back and paint it again. Paint is your friend. All right, we're moving back over to the frames, and we're going to start attaching this all together by hot gluing the dowel rods. So I have that all hot glued down, and now we're going to hot glue one of those tumbling tower blocks to my flower, just so because it was indented in the middle and I needed some surface to glue it down. So once I've got that attached, I am going to glue it on, and that's also when I'm going to glue the dowel rods in the middle that were cut. I just put plenty there to kind of glue them together at this time. And if you really just let this dry properly, because I sometimes don't do that because I don't have a lot of patience, it holds really well. And now I'm just pushing back all of the petals down, you know, because I pulled them up to paint them. And then I was trying to figure out how I wanted to hang this up because my frame here is not very wide to attach something. So what I did was cut some floral wire, and I just glued it. Well, I twisted it on and glued it, and I just kept it low enough so that you wouldn't be able to see it when I hang it up. And so that's what I did. There's a lot of different things you could do. It's also going to depend on where you're putting it, how big your frame is. You could easily just hang some twine from that as well. But this is the route I decided to take. And this is how they came out. Sorry about the lighting. I finished these projects late in the evening, and I was kind of in a time crunch to finish this video. We'll just say there was issues coming from all directions. So I hope you can appreciate these. The back on this one is not super pretty, but it'll be hanging on a wall. I didn't have a place on a wall to show it to you, so I'm just showing it to you like that. All right, for this first DIY, it's super easy. We're starting with a terracotta pot from Dollar Tree and some white Waverly chalk paint. The pot, I think, is the larger of the sizes that they carry at Dollar Tree, at least that I've seen, and they come in a 2-pack. So I painted it with white chalk paint, and I just did 1 coat, and, oh no, I'm sorry, I did do 2 coats. And it dries really quick, so that's really great because it absorbs it really well, so it doesn't take too long. Then I sanded it down, not to distress it, but just to smooth out the edges, because I hear that's important for rub-on transfers, which we're going to use. And then I hot glued some twine around the top. And then I'm just using my lighter to burn off all of the hairs on my hairy twine. Once I learned this trick, I pretty much do it all the time now. I really like it, and it's very helpful. So I have these rub-on transfers from the Dollar Tree, and I wanted to use this larger wreath one. And when I cut it out, I was like, oh, that's too big. So then what I decided to do was cut out a circle from like the inside of it, and that worked pretty good. And we're going to apply that, but then I kind of felt, well, you'll see here in just a second. If you haven't used the rub-on transfers before, they are very easy to do. You just take something and rub it on. I had some rods on my table, wooden dowels, so that's what I used, or my fingernail. Anyways, when you see this, you kind of see like the edges is obviously smooth because I cut it out, and the original wreath had like leaves, scattered leaves hanging off. So I wanted to make it less perfect. So I just took bits that I had cut out and just kind of added some more leaves off the edge to make it look a little bit more natural. So that's what I'm doing there. I ended up using it on my tiered tray. It's small enough for a tiered tray, but it's not super small because of the size pot I use, that it could also go on like a shelf or some other areas anyway. So I liked that much better. And I'm just going to seal it in with some Mod Podge just to be sure. And I always put that on the whole item just so that like the finish is the same, you know, on the whole project. And then I'm just putting in some floral foam. You don't necessarily even have to hot glue it because I just kind of crammed it in there. And then I have these little floral picks that I believe are from Dollar Tree. I'm pretty sure that they are. If not, they're from Walmart, but I'm almost positive they're from the Dollar Tree. And we're just making ourselves a little floral arrangement, and then we're going to cover up we're going to cover up the floral foam with this, whatever that was called. We're just going to call it moss because that's easier to say. From the Dollar Tree. This is a green one that I really liked, and I picked up a while ago but hadn't used it for anything yet. We're just putting in some hot glue and grabbing chunks of it and putting that on top, and then we're just giving it a little bit of a trim. And there you have it. That's how that one came out. I thought it was really, really cute. Okay, so for this next DIY, I'm just taking a frame that I had lying around, and I actually used the glass from it in another recent DIY. So I just have this frame laying around, nothing to do with it. So I thought it'd be good for this project. We're giving it a coat of white Waverly chalk paint. Once that dried, I'm just giving it a little bit of a sanding to just kind of, you know, rough it up a little bit. I liked the wood kind of coming through there. And I got this goodness gracious, this cork board stuff from the Dollar Tree, and I've had it and not really quite known what to do with it. So I decided to cut a piece out. I'm making this wreath out of this like greenery garland I picked up from Hobby Lobby. I got it when it was like half off, so I think I only paid like $2.50 or $2.99 for it. And there's so much on it. I've already used it on multiple projects, and there's a lot left. So that was well worth it to me. And I just took it enough to wrap around twice. I did hot glue it just a little bit to keep it together. And now I'm making a twine bow, just a very simple, wrapped it around my fingers and tied it in half. There are a lot of videos for bows. I'm just doing a basic simple one, but I know Sammy from Unicorn Dust Designs, I believe she has some like bow tutorial videos if you're looking for some different things and need some instruction. So anyways, we're just going to use some twine to basically hang up that wreath, and I'm just gluing it on the back side, and then we're going to glue the bow on top. But I realized that the bow, it felt like the bow was too big, and the little, I don't know, what are they called? The tails of the bow. There wasn't enough of them. So I cut a couple of the loops to give me a couple more tails to kind of balance out the bow. And this twine in particular is extremely hairy. So I'm back again with my lighter to burn off all the extra stuff. Plus I like the look it gives it too because it'll give it a couple little burnt marks and stuff. So did that and then just hot glued that on. And that's all there is to this. I love how this looks. I think it's really cute. All right, for this final DIY, I have this little bank deal from Dollar Tree, and we're going to start by taking it apart and giving the outside of this a couple of good coats. We're going to start by painting it with Waverly chalk paint in the color ink because I thought a darker color would help give the next color like better coverage just because it was so bright. Now it is glittery, but it's not like glitter that will fall off. It's just like sparkly paint. So it was very easy to paint over it. So we're going to paint everything that can be seen with the paint because I don't want any of this teal sparkly paint to be seen. Now this could be very cute and you could leave that color and still make this over for like a little girl's room. I think that the color is very fun. It just obviously isn't going to go with my home decor. So we're going to paint everything with the black paint, and once it is fully dry, we're going to go in with a couple coats of Waverly chalk paint in the color white. Once again, let it fully dry in between coats. And I'm not trying to not get a lot on the plexiglass surface there, but I'm also not too worried about it because we're going to be able to clean that up no problem. So once everything is fully dry, I'm going to sand it down and smooth it out. And then I'm going to go in with these scrapers. These come in, what was that, a 4-pack, I think, from the Dollar Tree. And I'm going to use that to scrape off the writing as well as scrape off any paint that got on this surface. And I was working on this for quite a while, and it was actually working really well. And then I realized that there was actually a cover on the blade that needed to come off. You can see here, and I was like, oh, well, that'll work even better because it's sharper. So there's a hint for you if you buy those. I did not realize that the little cover was on it. So yeah, we're just going to keep going. Take our time to not scratch any of the painted parts that are intended to be painted, and just clean this all up, and then I'll clean it down with some like window cleaner and paper towel. And then I'm going to just distress this a little bit by going around it with a little bit of black paint, and I'm kind of emphasizing some of the corners and just kind of, yeah, distressing it, aging it a little bit. And yeah, so I decided to put the slot where the bank opening would be if we put the money in at the bottom, and then realized later I probably should have done it at the top because from the bottom you actually can't see it, but I end up covering it up. So you'll see. Now I'm going to take these little floral picks. I think they're from the Dollar Tree, but they were just in my stash. I picked 3 of them and cut them down to size. And I'm going to wrap them together with some twine and then tie the twine to itself. You could just use a little dab of glue, but I didn't feel like pulling out my hot glue gun. I actually didn't use my hot glue gun for any of these DIYs, which is so rare. But we're just going to tie this together and make ourselves a little bundle, a little bouquet. It also dresses it up a little bit because the stems on these don't look super great. So we're going to get that bundle together, and then I'm just going to cut down some cardstock that I have. This is from a large pack of different wood plank type papers in different shades from Hobby Lobby, and it's a very good deal. Get it when it's 50% off. And anyways, we're going to cut that down to size. And I think I'm done, but I don't end up being done. Well, I knew I wasn't done because I needed to do the decals, but we're going to actually add more to the inside in just a second as well. But I'm going to take these Farm Fresh flowers, and we're going to scrape this on. Now this transferred really well for the most part, but then there was little bits that were having a little hard time transferring. And I'm wondering if I didn't clean the surface good enough. Normally these particular ones transfer very easily. So it wasn't super difficult, but there was a couple pieces that just didn't want to transfer for whatever reason. But I'm just using a little wooden piece to transfer this on, and you just press it and then peel off the little plastic piece. And then there's these little garden tools, and this little strip was a little bit too big to fit across, so I just cut them out individually so I could place them a little bit closer together. And then once I had all of those on, I felt like there was a little something missing, and I didn't like that you could see the hole. So I grabbed this moss from Dollar Tree and just took a little bit of it and put this down in, and then set the flowers on top, closed it back up. I love how this came out. You could easily change out the flowers different times of year if you wanted. And that's it for today's video. Don't forget to subscribe, give this video a thumbs up. So this next one, I'm taking these 2 wooden trays from Dollar Tree. I have had these in my stash forever. We're going to give them a coat of white paint. I am going to do all of the sides, not the bottom. I'm going to do the inside, but I'm going to skip the bottom and one end on each of them because we're going to attach them. I'm not worried about a super thick coat of paint here. Again, it's like a full coat, but not necessarily full coverage. So again, I'm also putting a little bit of paint in the kind of handles, so to speak, of the tray, just so that it looked finished. And I didn't really probably need to do all of the inside, but I wanted to make sure that if I decided to style it differently, that it was just kind of completed. So that's what I did. And now I'm going in with some Gorilla wood glue as well as some hot glue, and we're going to glue the ends together, and I just used some clamps to hold it in place. The hot glue is going to hold it quickly, the wood glue is going to hold it more long term, but I did want to use the clamps to make sure that it was like I wanted the 2 pieces to fit together tightly. Sorry for the lighting here. You know, it is what it is. It gets better. And now I've got my family sign, and I'm just going to pull off the little hanging piece here from the back, and we're not going to paint this. We're just going to leave it as is. So now I'm just taking some wooden dowels from the Dollar Tree, and we're going to attach these. You'll see in the end, I end up taking a couple of them off, and I end up cutting some of them down and putting more of them on. I end up doing 4 of them across, and I started here by putting too much at the top, and I ended up taking it off and lowering it because I decided if it was seen, even though it's not going to be, it'll be unfinished from the back and the word will be backwards from the back, I didn't want it to look, I don't know, super funky. So I only wanted it to be at the very, very bottom of it. I got these dog nail clippers from the Dollar Tree. I'd heard that these were good for cutting stuff like this. It works, but I don't know. I'm not sure that I think it's better than, I don't know, other tools. But I kind of score it and twist it and then break it off. It worked, but I don't know that it's super great compared to other things I've used. Anyways, got them to the length. Actually, I trim them down again. I don't show you all this, but I hot glue it and put some hot glue around the edges just to make sure that it's in there really good. You could use some other adhesive if you want, but this worked good enough for me. Now we're going to cut our styrofoam piece that I have. This is like a floral foam. This is like the thicker white stuff. It's more dense than the green stuff, but you could probably use that too. And I'm just cutting it using a putty knife into pieces that will fit inside of my little wooden trays. So yeah, just going to cut that down to size. And then we're going to take some hot glue and glue these pieces into the tray. I have a low temp glue gun. If you have one that has options, I would use the low temp because it will kind of like, you know, it's hot, it'll melt the styrofoam. But this ended up working just fine for me. But you could use something else if you wanted. It's not a very deep dish, so I did feel like I needed to hot glue the styrofoam to the bottom. Sometimes I don't, but in this case, I decided it would be better. And then I wanted to just give a little bit more texture and dimension to my tray here. So I'm using some apple barrel paint, I think it was elephant gray, and just dry brushing that on all of the outside surfaces and just kind of giving it like a distressed kind of, but I don't know. I just liked the texture and dimension. I didn't want it to be just a flat white color. And now I'm just going to throw on some hot glue to the bottom of the dowels and get this centered and drop this down in, pushing it down. That the sign is very secure on the dowels. I didn't feel it move at all there. And now we're going to embellish. I have this greenery. This was a garland from Hobby Lobby that I guess had broke and fallen apart on them. So they just kind of sold it very discounted. I think it was less than $5 in a bag in their clearance section. And I've been just pulling pieces of it for various DIYs. But you could use some picks from the Dollar Tree or Walmart or just whatever you have on hand. But I'm just going to fuss with this, put this around, and I'm not even putting it into the styrofoam. This would be easily taken out, and I could add in different florals for different seasons. So this is also kind of a changeable for different seasons. You know, you're not stuck with one particular look, and you can switch it up if you want. I love how this came out. For this first one, I have this little bird figurine. This is from the Dollar General, so it was only $1. You can pick up any little figurine at a thrift store or Dollar Tree, anywhere that you like, and we're just going to paint it. So I've got some Waverly chalk paint in the color white, and I'm going to paint all of this in about 1.5 coats. It almost covered it in one, but I was really trying to make sure it wasn't like drippy or goopy at all because I wanted to make sure I didn't like take away any of like the ridges and the texture. I loved this one because it has so much texture on it. And then I let it dry so that I could do the bottom, and I wanted to get the whole thing. And then once it is dry, I'm taking some Waverly wax. Now I realized that I had accidentally bought the Waverly wax in clear, and I had a couple people comment on one of my videos that you can just add white paint to it to get the white Waverly wax. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then I thought, I probably can add any color to it. So I use a lot of the celery color in my everyday decor, which is usually also my spring and summer decor because everything else is pretty more heavily themed. And so I added some celery paint to the Waverly wax, and I am brushing it on and then wiping it off with a paper towel. Here I'm kind of messing around with it. I wasn't really sure how thick I wanted to get. So I go a little bit thicker here, and I just make sure to get in all of the grooves. And this is a really fun thing to do to any like figurine that you find. Thrift stores have a lot of this kind of stuff, and you might not like the colors of it. It might not be your style, but this is a really fun way to kind of update it and make it work for you. So I just kept going until I had the desired look and really made sure I got into all of the little ridges. So That's what I'm doing here. We're going to brush it on. Sorry, I kept going out of frame a couple times. I'm going to brush it on and then wipe it off. And that is it. I love how this came out. I think it's a really cute addition to my shelves. And then I have this piece that this was, I believe, from last year, but they have them this year. It was a part of there was three of these attached to a ribbon. This is the only one I have left, and I'm going to try to rip off the paper best I can. You can decide if you want to do this or not. I wanted my piece to look finished. We're going to use the other side, but we're going to paint this side as well. You could also just cover it with paper or leave it, and we're going to give some really good coats of Waverly chalk paint in the color white. I'm making sure to get all of the edges and both sides, so I let it dry and flip it over just to get everything really good. Hindsight, I probably could have just connected all of the pieces together and then painted it, and that would have saved me some paint. But you'll see what I mean in a second here. I've got this little back to a picture frame that I saved when I used the picture frame for another DIY. My camera kept falling. I'm going to give this a good coat of paint as well, just because I wanted it to look more finished. So this is where I'm saying I could have just connected it first and then painted it because I didn't need to paint the whole back of the sign. Anyways, I'm using this Gorilla Wood glue. I'm going to put a good amount on. I probably put a little too much because I had to keep cleaning up where it was oozing. And we're going to attach this. I wasn't sure if hot glue was going to work as well because the back was fully painted and I just wanted a really good hold. So I just wanted to make a stand. If you don't have the back of a picture frame, you could easily use some tumbling tower blocks or something else. But this is what I had, and so I'm using it, and I'm just using these little clamps from the Dollar Tree to hold it down and give this a good amount of time for it to fully dry. If you're new here, I would hope that you would consider subscribing. I love sharing easy, budget-friendly DIYs with you. I do share an occasional haul, and I also do an occasional craft with me live. So if you're into that kind of thing, please subscribe, and I hope to see you in my future videos. Also, if you're new, please make sure you comment down below and let me know that you have subscribed. So now I am taking these wall stickers. They're from the Dollar Tree. They carry them in different designs at different times. Dollar General also has a really good selection as well. And I'm just making a really simple spring decor. I wanted something without words on it. So I'm just taking some of these butterflies, but we're going to switch it up a little bit. This seemed a little bit too, I don't know, boring to me. So we're going to go along the edges with some antique wax, and I didn't have too much on my brush, but I also didn't go too light. I really wanted to define these edges. I love the texture of these edges, the design of these edges, and I wanted it to make it stand out. And then I'm also going to go across the whole thing with some antique wax, you can see, and then wiping that off as well. So just not wanting to go too heavy, but really wanted to age this a little bit and give it some texture. And as you can see here, I also went in with some more of that celery because that is in a lot of my decor. Very, very much a dry brush. I did a lot of in between the flowers, but I did do a little bit over the flower, not the flowers, these are butterflies, a little bit over the butterflies as well, just to make sure that it all looked kind of cohesive. And then we're going to seal it really good with some Mod Podge just to make sure everything stays well. And here it is all finished. And again, I think it's just a cute, nice addition to the shelf. And I love to add things that aren't just words. Otherwise, I end up with everything has words. So these are some wordless DIYs. So for this next one, I have this pack of bamboo rings from the Dollar Tree. And I thought they'd be good for kind of bases for wreaths because sometimes you just need something to attach to. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm going to take some of this fern from Waverly chalk paint, and we're going to coat this bamboo ring on all sides. It was very easy to paint, and I'm just going to give it a good coat because this way it will blend in with what I'm going to use for the wreath. This is not going to be a super full wreath, and so I wanted the ring to just kind of blend in and you wouldn't even really notice, and it worked perfectly for this. So that's why I'm doing this. And then I've got this wreath. Well, no, actually it's not. It's a garland from Target Bullseye Playground, I think is what it's called. And it was only $3. I really wish I could find more of them, but I only found the one. But when I saw it sitting on the shelf, it was wrapped up like this. And I'm like, that would look like make for a really pretty wreath. I didn't necessarily need something super full. I think it's kind of light and airy. And so I'm just going to work this around our bamboo ring as best I can. I didn't wrap it around a ton. I did wrap it around in a couple spots. I cut open, there was like these loops on either end probably to hang it. I cut that open and wrapped that around. And then I'm going to go in with this green floral wire and just put that in a few different places where I thought it would be good to help secure it down a little bit more. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. It's a very easy way to help me out, to support my channel. It lets me know you like what I'm putting out, and it also lets YouTube know that you are liking my content and makes them more likely to share my videos with new viewers. So that helps me out a ton. So now I'm just taking some of this lace ribbon from the Dollar Tree. I love this stuff. I think it's really pretty. It's like delicate without being too delicate, so it still kind of is a little bit more farmhouse to me. And I am just going to tie that on the bottom, and we're going to tie a loop at the top. And this is how I hang it on my door. I've got this on a closet door. You can see I've got a little command hook on the back, and I just attach a loop to that, and it holds really well. And as long as the ribbon's not too thick, it will go over the door just fine. All right, so for this first one, I have this sign from the Dollar Tree, and I actually started using this for another video and never ended up finishing it. Well, I had problems. So anyways, I just wanted to show you what I was using to start it off with. So I'm scraping off the happy sign. I think they had these in a few different ones, but you're gonna scrape that off. It was actually just like cardboard, and then I'm using some sandpaper to finish cleaning that up and then giving it a coat of Waverly chalk paint in the color white. Now with what I ended up doing with it, I could have skipped the whole painting process, but I wanted you to see what the original sign was. And now I just have some scrapbook paper that I am cutting down to size, and I'm gluing this on with a glue stick. If I didn't say that sign was from the Dollar Tree, I don't remember if I already said that. And then I pieced together another piece of paper just to finish giving the backdrop here. But you can use any scrapbook paper. I almost used a part of a calendar page. Anyways, whatever you want. And I decided to pull out these little tools from Plaid. They had sent me in a box a while back, and I have not used this little roller yet. It's supposed to be really helpful for using Mod Podge, which I wasn't using on this particular project, but to smooth it out, and I really like it, so I'm excited to use it for some Mod Podge in the future. And then I have this little stencil. This was one of those circle wheel stencils from the Dollar Tree, this cute little bird. I had cut them apart just because it was easier for me to store it. And then I just taped off the little stem on the bird. The bird's like supposed to be perched on a branch. So not stem, a branch, but I didn't want to do that. So I just taped that off, and then I'm just using some white acrylic paint and a stiff brush, and we're just going to stencil this on. I'm giving some good coverage because I have such a bold print, but I'm also not worried about it like looking super crisp. I didn't want any bleed through, and I'm going with a little bit of a more like rustic-y look, so it doesn't have to really, I don't know, you'll see. It doesn't have to be like super, super solid. This is a little out of my norm, the colors that I'm using, but I thought it'd be really pretty for spring. But you could use any paper, any stencil, anything you want, and really go for, you know, whatever you want to do here. But this is what I chose to do, and I thought it came out really cute. It's kind of like subtle because the pattern is so bright, but it's just enough where you can, I don't know, you can still see it. And then I have these beaded sticker strips from the Dollar Tree, and this first batch I somehow peeled the beads off of like the sticky part, so I wasn't really sure what was happening here, so I pulled out some glue and glued them on, and then when I went to do the next ones I realized somehow it just came detached. But either way, the glue worked as well, and I just wanted to add a little bit of embellishment here. These little beads are also fun to put on stuff, and you could like paint over them, but I kind of went for a different total vibe on this piece here. So it's a little bit, I don't know if it's actually like shabby chic, but it's a little bit more pretty, dainty maybe. But anyways, I like how it came out, and I just put 3 strips on one side, 1 on the other, and it just kind of added a little bit of subtle detail. Popped this back in the frame, and that's it for this one. I really love how this came out. I think it's very pretty, and it'll be fun for spring. So for this next one, I have this little watering can. This was originally from Hobby Lobby, and it had been a spring or Easter one with a little chick on it. You could kind of see a yellow spot there. that I had taken it off previously. And normally I just put this on my tiered tray and turned it around, but I decided I wanted to try to paint it. So I sanded it down to kind of rough up the texture of it, wiped it off, and we're going in some Waverly chalk paint in the color Celery. I love using greens in my everyday decor, but I also feel like it's really pretty for spring. I love using different greens. So we're going to paint it. I'm going to try to leave the spout and the handle white, and I did have to do a couple coats of this. It's metal, so let it fully dry in between coats to make sure that you get good coverage and that the paint does not peel back off. But I was going to say, I picked up this watering can from Hobby Lobby a couple years ago on clearance for like, I don't know, maybe like 20 cents or something. I love finding seasonal items that can be used all year round or in different ways, or that I can make over, but I get them super cheap because they mark their seasonal stuff down so much. So just something to be looking for when you're out shopping. And I'm painting the base of it and the top rim to cover up that black. So now I've got a couple of good solid coats on this, and we're going to, what are we doing? Going in, oh yes, I bought these stamps from Dollar Tree, and they're super pretty. There's already paint on it because I experimented on another surface. I don't have any ink, so I tried just using this pouncer brush with a little bit of paint on it and brush that across the top and carefully place this on. And it doesn't come out like super crisp, but I think it's really pretty, and it kind of looks like it's been there a while, which I like that look. So I love this, and I did it on both sides. I picked out this little hummingbird and let that dry completely. And now we're going to go in with some Mod Podge, and I did the one that is dishwasher, for like dishwasher safe items, which this is not going to be used for that, but it also had a high gloss, which I wanted so that it would kind of match the handle and the spout because they were glossy as well. But I don't know if you knew this, Mod Podge has tons and tons of different types of Mod Podge, and Plaid sent them to me, and I've been having fun using them. Definitely check them out. I just styled this with some pretty little florals that I had laying around, and I'm going to probably put this on like a tiered tray or maybe a filler on a shelf, but I love how it came out. This next thing is this jar that I picked up from Hobby Lobby. It's got a little chalkboard spot that I didn't want to use, and so I sanded it down a little bit, and now I'm going over with more of that Waverly chalk paint in the color Celery. I had picked up this jar either when it was on clearance or on sale, but it was super cheap, and I haven't really been using it. So I was like, well, let me go ahead and paint it and use it in a different way than maybe I originally intended to. So once again, let it dry thoroughly in between coats because it is on glass, and you want to make sure that the paint does not peel off. But I got a couple of good coats on there, and I'm going to seal it in with some Mod Podge. This time I'm using one in the matte finish just because I like that better for this project. And gave that a good coat and let that thoroughly dry. That's going to help keep the paint from chipping off. And then I have this ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and I tried avoiding pulling out my glue gun, so I tried using some glue to attach it. But long story short, it didn't work, and I had to pull out my hot glue gun anyway. But I'm just going to glue this around, attach this around the middle of my jar. And then I wanted a little bit something else, so I've got a piece of twine, and I'm using my lighter to burn off all of the extra little hairs, and I'm wrapping this just a few times around the middle of the ribbon to kind of tone down the lace, but still let the lace be seen, and once again put in some flowers that I had, and I just love how this came out. Super pretty, and it'll be a great little filler piece for spring, but you could change out the florals and make it a little less springy if you wanted as well. For this final DIY, I have one of these little terracotta pots from the Dollar Tree. I think this is the smallest ones that come in a 3-pack, and I've had them forever. I've had 2 left forever. I used one a long time ago. Anyways, I'm going to give this a coat of paint. I am just using white paint. I believe that was Apple Barrel, which is also a Plaid product. Plaid makes a lot of DIY products that we use. Anyways, I'm going to give this one coat, but one good coat. The terracotta will soak it up really well, and it dries quick. And I decided to do the inside of the pot too, just because it dries super quick. And I don't know, I knew I wanted to do the top of the inside, so I just did the whole thing. Anyways, I found these fun rub-on transfers from the Dollar Tree, and I thought they'd be cute for the rim. Now, I had a little struggle, and I wanted to share it with you. I was having trouble. It wasn't transferring, and it was starting to pull off the paint. So I sanded that down, repainted the top, And now I'm going to give it a coat of Mod Podge once again in the matte finish before I do the rub-on transfer. I think that sometimes the rub-on transfers, when you've painted a piece, it pulls it back off and it just doesn't work well. So I did it this time and it transferred very easily. I just used my fingernail. I did only like a few at a time. I could have just done one strip, but being that it was rounded, I couldn't get it to like lay flat. So I just did like, I don't know what this design is. It's kind of like little flowers. I did like 4 or 5 of them at a time and just went all the way around. And then I didn't want it to look quite so perfect, so I'm using a stencil brush with very, very little white paint across the top of the rub-on transfers, just so that it didn't, I don't know, I wanted it to not look like it was freshly done. And then I'm going in, doing a little bit of dry brushing again. Very little paint. You can see I'm trying to get as much of it off of my paintbrush as possible. And I'm just kind of, I don't know, I wanted some texture. I didn't want it to just look, I don't know, like a brand new little pot. But I'm just going around with that until I had the desired look that I was going for. And then I took some greenery that I had on hand and put that in there. It's actually little pieces off of a garland that I had bought on clearance at Hobby Lobby. And I love how this came out. And it's another cute little piece, perfect for a tiered tray. For this next one, I have this little piece that I picked up from a thrift store. It has a little chip in the top, but it's on the inside and you can't really see it. But because of that little chip, they gave it to me for free. It would have only been $0.25, but they gave it to me for free. So I was pretty excited about that. So we're going to go in with Waverly chalk paint in the color Celery. And once again, I'm going to give this about 3 coats, letting it fully dry in between every coat, just so that the paint doesn't peel back off of this. Now, I love using Celery and Moss, which are 2 Waverly colors, but I just love using the different tones of green for my everyday decor, but I also feel like it fits in perfectly with spring. I do end up painting the bottom of this, although it's not totally necessary, but I just figured if someone saw the bottom, I wanted it to look like it was kind of supposed to be green. But we're going to make sure to get into all of those little nooks and crannies, all of the little details, give it enough coats until it is a solid finish. So you can see it is now dry. I didn't do as many coats on the bottom, but that's okay. We're going to cover that up. So I'm taking some Waverly chalk paint in the color white, and once again with a stencil brush with very little paint, I'm going to go over the whole thing, but I'm emphasizing all of these little ridges and raised pieces, all of the detail here. I was going to go in with some wax from Waverly and really just enhance all of these little textures on this piece, but I realized when I went to do it that I have the clear wax, which is great for sealing stuff, but I needed the white wax. So I'm gonna have to add that to my list and pick that up because I really want to mess around with the wax. I haven't really done that. So I just went over it with the white paint and I sped this up quite a bit, but you can see I just went over the whole thing and just tried to go pretty light on it. And then once again, I went over with the Mod Podge just to seal everything in. And I did, yeah, just everything so that it doesn't come off when I'm setting it down on a piece of furniture or something. And I just put a little bit of greenery in it, and I love how this came out. I think it's very cute, and it didn't cost me anything, so that's even better.
For this next DIY, I have this cute little plant from Dollar General. I picked up a bunch of these one time on clearance. Dollar General has amazing clearance, and I picked up a ton of faux plants. I don't remember what I paid for this one, but I'm pretty sure it was under $1, and it's a really good size. And the color and pattern on it was fine, but it wasn't really what I wanted, and I bought it with the intention of making it over. So I'm painting it with some Waverly chalk paint in the color white. I'm using my hairdryer to dry that down so that I could set it down and paint the rest of it. But I also wanted to paint a couple coats as well. Just be careful when you're using a hairdryer or a heat gun. Don't do too hot of a heat. You don't want to crack the paint, and you also don't want to make it tacky. But if you're aware of that and careful with that, it's a very handy tool. So we're going to give this, like I said, a couple good coats of white Waverly chalk paint to make sure that we get some full coverage to cover up that navy and that gold strip. So when you find things on sale, think about, what can I do with it? How can I make it over? Maybe it's a clearance find. Maybe it's from a thrift store. Anyways, I'm also going to take the time with a small paintbrush to do the rim here. It might not look like it's much different, but The base color of this was more of a cream color, and so obviously I wanted that all to match. And then I found these pretty rub-on transfers from the Dollar Tree, and I didn't have enough to just fully wrap it around. So what I decided to do was just cut out sections of it and try to purposefully, like make it look purposefully all over the place, if that makes sense. Not like, I didn't want it to look like, oh, I don't have enough of this. So you'll see how it came out. But I loved this plant. I'm gonna actually use this out on my patio. So I love that the rocks were already kind of like built into it, like glued in, so I didn't have to worry about anything falling out. And it's a screened in, like covered patio. So it doesn't get all of the elements, but it does get, some of them. It's not like fully protected or anything. But anyways, yeah, this way I don't have to worry about forgetting to water it and it not lasting. So these rub-on transfers transfer pretty well. I'm just using my fingernail. Sometimes you can use like a wooden popsicle stick or something else to help transfer them. And there you can see it's all done. Like I said, I just kind of tried to do like a mismatch pattern, so to speak. And then I did seal it in with some Waverly chalk paint, or not Waverly chalk paint, Waverly wax. It's just a clear wax. You could also use a Mod Podge or something like that, but that does help seal it in, protect it a little bit, and usually things like this will hold up pretty well if you do that. So just rub the wax on and kind of buff it in with a paper towel or an old t-shirt. And here it is. I love how this came out. I thought it was really pretty and a little bit more spring-like than the previous pattern of the pot.
All right, so for this first DIY, I have this little flower stand. This was from Hobby Lobby. It was in their Easter clearance. As you can see, it doesn't particularly look Eastery. I think it's great for spring and summer. But I picked it up for either 90% off or 75% off. Either way, I got a really good deal on it. So we're just going to sand off the glitter. I didn't want to sand off too much because I didn't want to take away too much of the texture that's on this. You'll see why later. But we're going to sand off the glitter and then wipe that down so we don't have any of the dust or glitter in the way while we paint. And now I'm going in with this salmon from, I think it's Ceram Coat. Not totally sure. It is a plaid paint. And I thought this salmon color would be really pretty and it would go with some other things that I have out right now. So I'm going to give the flower part and all of the edges, I think I ended up doing about 2 coats of that. Just making sure you let it dry fully in between. If you are new to my channel, I love sharing budget-friendly DIYs. I also do an occasional crafting live along with a couple of here and there crafting hauls. So if you're into that kind of thing, please consider subscribing before you leave. Now we're going to go in with Waverly chalk paint in the color Celery, and we're going to do the leaf, the stems, and the base. And once again, I'm going to just cover all the sides and did 2 coats, I think, to get the coverage that I wanted. So now we're going to go in with Waverly's clear wax, and I'm going to tint it using some white acrylic paint from Apple Barrel. And we're just going to give that a mix, and we are going to cover the whole thing with this wax, and we're going to try to bring out that texture that I just showed you there. We're going to use a paper towel, and we're going to wipe on the wax, and then kind of like buff it out with a clean part of the paper towel. And I really focused on the areas that were textured, but I did apply the wax on the whole thing just so that the finish was the same all over. I paid, like I said, special attention to the textured spots and then also made sure that where any of the pieces met that there wasn't any clumps of the wax because, you don't want clumps of wax. But this Waverly wax is such a fun thing to use when bringing out detail. And I just love how this came out. It's a really cute little, I always say this, but I truly use these as like filler pieces. And I thought this was really fun. And all I took was a little bit of paint and wax to fit my decor from how it was originally. Moving on, I have this frame, which I picked up from a thrift store. And I believe I paid 25 cents for it. I did share it recently in a little thrift haul that I actually just did a YouTube short on because it was just a really small haul. But we're just going to give this a good sanding. We want to rough up because it was the finish that was on it. I felt like the paint might be hard to adhere to it. So I just wanted to sand it in. This one does have a couple little like layers in it. So I sanded all of those edges wiped it down to get the dust off, and once again, I'm going in with some Waverly chalk paint in the color white. I only do one coat of the white paint because I decided to actually go with another color, but I was glad I have a little bit of a white base, and you will see why as we go along. But of course, you can use any color that you want. And now I'm going to go in with Waverly chalk paint in the color celery, and we're going to paint this whole thing, and I do give it 2 coats of the celery. I do end up painting the back of the frame as well, but I don't share that with you in the video, but I did want to make sure it looked finished, and that I figured that like reddish wood would really stand out if someone were to see the back of the frame. So I did paint that as well. And I painted the kind of inside rim because I knew that you'd be able to see that as well when we put it all back together. So once that was fully dry, I'm going in with my sanding block and I'm going to rough it up a little bit, and I'm really focusing on all of these little edges, and you can see the wood through it in some places, in some you just got that white layer of paint. So I was glad that I had put the white paint underneath just so that there was kind of layers in the colors, if that makes sense. So I just kept sanding till I had the look I wanted. And then I just took a scrapbook piece of paper from like a pack I had that I didn't care for this particular print that much, and I'm using the back because it's just a solid white and it was a thicker paper, and I'm just going to cut that out to fit the glass, and we're going to put that frame back together with the white paper facing the front. And once that's all assembled, we're going to go in with these rub-on transfers. These are so cute from Dollar Tree, and I just cut out the pieces that I wanted to use, and I'm just using a popsicle stick to rub that on. And you can also use your finger or different tools, whatever. And you just want to make sure that you peel it off slowly so that if some of the print is coming off, you can just lay it back down and rub on it a little bit more. Now, I did have a little bit of problem on one letter at the end. The transfer just moved a little bit. You can see that R is missing some. So I went in with a Sharpie. I tried using my fine tip Sharpie, but it was kind of out of ink, or mostly out of ink, so it was not working. So I very, very carefully went in with a regular size Sharpie and just kind of filled in the gaps there, and it actually worked pretty good. The fine tip one would have been a lot easier, but this did the trick ultimately. Or if you have a paint pen, that would work as well, but you can't even tell. Now, I wanted to go in with some more of that wax because I already had some of the clear wax tinted with the white. So I was like, you know what, that would be really pretty on this frame as well. So I did the same thing, rubbing it on and then like buffing it out, and emphasized kind of the edges and just the texture of the frame. And I really liked how this kind of completed the look. And that's all I did for this one. I think this came out really cute. I love the transfers just on the glass with the bright white background. Yeah, love how that one came out.
Well, I hope you had fun with this video going back in time with me, and I hope you got some fun spring inspiration. Maybe if we will make spring items, spring will come. I don't know, but I hope you liked it. If you did, once again, give it a thumbs up. I'd love it if you would subscribe if you have not yet done so, and I will see you in my next one. Bye, guys.